What up? It's your boy T-Burn Reaction. Today is Music Money by the cap is made possibly captures all with a video from Digging the Grace though. This now I meant in the video previous I did Illmatic Diary production. I had a mistake that the next video is something about Illmatic. It's closely not really about Illmatic, but one of the producers who helped made Illmatic. That's T.R.O.Y. This is actually about his signature, deconstruct his signature sound. You know, T.R.O.Y. one of the greatest producers of all time. What did just drop? Oh, clip. Anyway, and one of his most iconic production was one of his iconic songs from along with his buddy Smooth is a hit single T.R.O.Y. T.R.O.Y. or They Reminisce Over You as well too, which was dedicated to one of the members of the Heavy D and the Boys, Troy Dixon, T.R.O.Y, who sadly a year before that passed away due to an accident happened at a during tour. But other than that though, we're gonna check a look at from Digging the Grace. I do like this guy's commentary and when he talks about in this video about deconstruction T.R.O.Y signature sound on based off the hit single he did the sound off of, that is When They Reminisce Over You, aka Troy. R.I.P. to Trouble T.R.O.Y. Let's get it.
Today I'm breaking down the song They Reminisce Over You by T.R.O.Y and CL Smooth. But more than that, I'll be tracing a line through T.R.O.Y's productions, seeing the evolution of his production style. I don't even have to play that much of this and you can already catch it. Did you catch that? Coming out of the late 80s, helping establish a new sound for 90s hip-hop, and seeing how this song and the album Mecca and the Soul Brother both came out of and balanced the hip-hop scene of the day. This story begins with the liner notes on the inside of an album cover. Quote, "A new music is emerging in this country. It is not yet fully formed, but it is taking shape, and the outlines are beginning to be seen. When it has reached its growth, it will contain all the elements that have been separate in American popular music, and added to it will be electronics. It will be true 20th century music, the music of its time. And as is becoming more evident, it will have a strong jazz flavor." We're about to go through a lot of hip-hop history, and then at the end, we're going to come back to this quote. It's a great summary of his song.
This and I think I knew Reggie was doing them back-to-back, one because of T.R.O.Y being part of it, two. Like we said, we still celebrating 50 years of hip-hop. Now I mean, if the birthday passed in August, we still celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, so yeah.
But Mecca and the Soul Brother isn't the album this quote is from. Well, not exactly. I'm just going to plant that seed at the bottom left of your screen. We'll come back to it at the end. So in 1992, T.R.O.Y and CL Smooth released their debut full-length album, Mecca and the Soul Brother. Absolutely classic album. But before we can understand why the sound of this album is such a big deal, we need to talk about the scene just before this came out. In the late 80s and early 90s, hip-hop was ready for a change and already beginning to evolve. The James Brown drum break samples are all over hip-hop records at this time. Artists like Eric B. and Rakim, Boogie Down Productions, Public Enemy, LL Cool J, and Run DMC all sampled James Brown, and every one that I just named sampled the funky drummer specifically. For example, here's Rebel Without a Pause by Public Enemy from 1988. Yes, the rhythm's a rebel. And here's James Brown's funky drummer. This James Brown-based subgenre connects back to the beginnings of hip-hop. Give It Up or Turn It Loose was another...
That's the other song. That's the other song I found that was like, I knew something off of Digging the Great Grace. That's the song that wasn't as popular in the beginning, but became iconic due to samples. That was that song. Okay.
James Brown song that was a favorite of DJ Kool Herc for his legendary merry-go-round DJ technique beginning in 1973. But at the same time, late 80s and early 90s, you've got artists like the Jungle Brothers with I'll House You, or Heavy D and the Boys with Now That We Found Love. This is hip-hop with a strong house music influence. This connects back to artists like Africa Bambaataa, who leaned more electronic with songs like Planet Rock from 1982. Here's Now That We Found Love by Heavy D and the Boys from 1991. And here's Planet Rock. By the way, check out what I've got underneath here. Official Digging the Greats vinyl slip mats. These work great for DJing or just listening to vinyl at home. You can get these at diggingthegreats.com or by clicking the product link below. This isn't some cheap print-on-demand thing. These are high-quality slip mats that I'm sending you personally. I'm also shipping to a bunch of countries all over the world, so go check it out, diggingthegreats.com. Hip-hop was born in New York, and as it grew in popularity, it began to change and evolve. But in both of these cases, we can trace the evolution back to previous hip-hop songs. At the same time, though, Dr. Dre is blowing up over on the West Coast with the G-Funk sound. The East Coast had been incredibly successful with the James Brown samples or the house influence sound, but with the West Coast taking over, it was time for the next evolutionary step in the East Coast sound. Some artists were beginning to pioneer the use of jazz samples in hip-hop. Gang Starr's 1989 song Words I Manifest sampled the jazz standard A Night in Tunisia. The Low End Theory by A Tribe Called Quest from '91 has many jazz samples and even features Ron Carter on bass. So we got all this stuff brewing. James Brown sample saturation, electronic influence, the popularity of G-Funk, the jazz sound gaining traction, and in the middle of all of this is a kid named Peter Phillips, aka DJ Pete Rock. After making a name for himself as a DJ in high school, Pete Rock got his first big break when he started DJing for Marley Marl's radio show on WBLS called In Control. He began DJing Friday and Saturday nights, and as he started mixing in his own demos, people started to take notice.
Wow.
Being around Marley Marl pushed Pete Rock to be even better.
Nice.
As he explained, he brought sampling to the world's attention with the tracks he did, and so many cats followed what he did. I wanted to know, how can I make beats like that, but also have my own swing and my own aura to them? And after a while of doing beats on my own, I made my own identity. Pete Rock was also close with someone we've already mentioned, his cousin, Heavy D of The Boys fame. Pete Rock began to step up his production, especially after the 1989 Heavy D album Big Time. He's got several co-production credits on this album, including the song A Better Land. Let's take a listen. I want you to hear something. Alright, so
There we go.
the sound here is a mix of things. For one, the drums, they're starting to sound a little more like Pete Rock. Listen for the kick and snare. They're a little grittier sounding, but listen for the hi-hats. Still pretty electronic sounding. There's also synth bass on this. Here it is. Right here. So that's pretty electronic, but the main sample, this almost sounds like, the Gang Starr song Work.
Hey, whoa. That song did not come on 1988. 1998.
Almost. Not the same sample, but it's crazy because this Heavy D song predates Work by 9 years. Now, A Better Land was produced by Pete Rock and Heavy D, so I don't know who exactly did what, but it's interesting to hear this hybrid sound of house, grittier drums that aren't a pre-existing loop, and almost previewing where the sound of 90s East Coast hip-hop was headed. Pete Rock's style continues to evolve, and in 1991, Pete Rock and CL Smooth released the EP All Sold Out. This EP is a perfect encapsulation of everything we've looked at so far. Here's the song The Creator.
Yep.
This doesn't quite sound like Heavy D, but it's very Heavy D-esque. You can tell by listening to it he's been hanging out with them for a while. This song would later be remixed and sound more Pete Rock-esque. But let's take the song Go With The Flow. I don't even have to play that much of this, and you can already catch it. Did you catch that? That's James Brown Funky Drummer right from the top. We've got that electronic sound on one song, the James Brown sample on another, and then we get to this song.
The Rizzle.
Immediately, this sounds different. The drums are grittier, it's got more bounce to it. That's mixed in with a horn sample. This song sounds much more like where Pete Rock is headed with his sound. And the name of this song is Mecca and the Soul Brothers. The name of their next release, the full-length album that would help define the 90s East Coast hip-hop sound, is Mecca and the Soul Brother. By the way, I've put together a Spotify listening guide of every song that I'm playing in this video, so check the description for the link. Mecca and the Soul Brother contains the song They Reminisce Over You. If you know that song, you probably know this story behind it. One of Heavy D's dancers, Troy Dixon, aka Trouble T.R.O.Y, tragically fell to his death after a show. This was hard for the entire community, including CL Smooth and P.R.O.Y, who were good friends with him. Heavy D's next album was dedicated to Trouble T.R.O.Y, and P.R.O.Y and CL Smooth made the song They Reminisce Over You, parentheses T.R.O.Y. Lyrically, CL reminisces for a spell, or should I say he thinks back, about his family life growing up, with the third verse specifically focusing on Trouble T.R.O.Y. Musically, P.R.O.Y has found his signature sound with this song. The sound and feel of the drums, the horn line, the filtered bass, it's so good. P.R.O.Y is another pioneer of jazz samples in hip-hop, and this saxophone line is beyond iconic. But do you know what this sample's from? We've already talked about T.R.O.Y bringing in Ron Carter, or Gang Starr sampling A Night in Tunisia. It's written by Dizzy Gillespie. You know, real jazz cats. But what about this song? This is the Tom Scott album, The Honeysuckle Breeze from 1967. You know, my father taught me you can never trust a man with two first names. So already, I don't know about this guy. And just when you thought it can't get any whiter than two basic white guy first names mashed together, take a look at these sandals. I almost made the title of this video, The Tivas That Changed the World, because as unexpected as this album cover may be, I mean, who would have thought that this would lead to a hip-hop classic? Not to mention, Tom Scott is a legendary sax player for so many other reasons. His credits include being a member of the Blues Brothers. He worked with Toto, Whitney Houston, Quincy Jones, Barbra Streisand, Steely Dan's Asia. He played on Billie Jean, Minnie Riperton, including Baby This Love I Have, which was sampled by Tribe for Check the Rhyme. Tom Scott played on a Bob James album, who, of course, is the artist behind multiple classic hip-hop samples, and also another example of a man you shouldn't trust. But before all of that, Tom Scott recorded his debut album, The Honeysuckle Breeze, in 1967 when he was 19 years old. It's actually a pretty crazy lineup of musicians, including the legendary bassist Carol Kaye and Jim Gordon on drums. That name sounds familiar. That's the same guy who played drums on another classic sample, Apache by the Incredible Bongo Band. This album features some jazz like Naima by John Coltrane, but also a cover of a Beatles song and one song of particular interest, a cover of a Jefferson Airplane song called Today. P.R.O.Y found this song while crate digging with Large Professor, and Q-Tip was apparently also around during the creation of this band. This Tom Scott song had been sampled in snippets before, but as P.R.O.Y listened to the whole thing in search of samples for the song that would be a tribute to his late friend, he knew he'd found something special. When I found the record by Tom Scott, basically I just heard something incredible that touched me and made me cry. It had such a beautiful bass line, and I started with that first. I found some other sounds and then heard some sax in there and used that. Next thing you know, I have a beautiful beat made. When I mixed the song down, I had Charlie Brown from Leaders of the New School in the session with me, and we all just started crying. Hell yes, you just started crying. This song's amazing. You're grieving the loss of your friend. You're pouring out your heart and soul into a piece of music. That's powerful. Tom Scott, by the way, says the record label owns all the performance rights to his first album, so while the sample has been cleared and the label is making money, he's never actually been paid. I mean, industry rule number 4080, if you know what I'm talking about, finish that line in the comments. P.R.O.Y took this song and sampled multiple elements of it. Parts of it are filtered for the bass or the chords or the sax line, and multiple samples from this same song are layered in several spots. There's a lot happening here. This isn't just a straight loop. For example, let's pitch this down to get closer to where P.R.O.Y's gonna be. We've got a few other ones. Now let's filter and isolate that sax. Let's filter and isolate the bass. All of this is at play, layered simultaneously. Remember how we said producers started using more jazz samples? Most jazz heads would scoff at this obscure cover of a Jefferson Airplane song. It's much more of an American popular song, if you will, but this definitely has a strong jazz flavor. I don't know if you can tell what I'm doing. This is simultaneously a callback and a setup. For the drums, we've already talked about the James Brown samples, and what I love about this song is that Pete Rock is sampling Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud by James Brown, but instead of sampling the drum groove, he's sampling individual hits. Like, check it out, here's the beginning of the song. Did you miss it? That was it. Those were the hits. The reason you'd normally grab a James Brown drum sample is because you're importing the groove into your song. But Pete Rock is grabbing just the hits and making his own groove. He's taking the drum hits, chopping it up with his SP1200, an electronic piece of equipment, and making something brand new. That brand new groove, by the way, features things that a normal human drummer can't do. Like, check out this snare fill. Now, technically, a drummer can play that, but because they're playing with two sticks, it's going to sound different than if it's the same sample repeated in that short amount of time. In this way, I sort of see the Heavy D influence. It's not house, but it's also not a James Brown groove. It's technically James Brown, but it's chopped, it's grittier sounding, and it's all Pete Rock. You put this together with the sample chops from the Tiva King himself, Tom Scott, layer samples on top of each other, add echo effects, and the result is, iconic. That's the filtered sax line right there. Play it again. Here comes the filtered bass. Underneath. Play it again. And here comes the James Brown chopped drums. Absolutely iconic. Now, hold on to everything we just talked about. We're going to go pick this up and revisit the album liner notes quote from the beginning. A new music is emerging in this country. It's not yet fully formed, but it is taking shape and the outlines are beginning to be seen. When it has reached its growth, it will contain all the elements that have been separate in American popular music, and added to it will be electronics. It will be true 20th century music, the music of its time, and as is becoming more evident, it will have a strong jazz flavor. This quote is taken from the album liner notes of Tom Scott's 1967 album, The Honeysuckle Breeze. But it might as well be from Pete Rock and CL Smooth's Mecca and the Soul Brother. Pete Rock is a hip-hop pioneer, bringing together multiple styles of hip-hop, fusing them together, creating something new, and inspiring artists for years to come. We just looked at They Reminisce Over You specifically, but this entire album is incredible. This album came out in 1992, an amazing year for hip-hop. In 92, you've also got the release of Gang Starr's Daily Operation, Don't Sweat the Technique. So many classic albums around this time are pushing hip-hop into its next phase, one step at a time. Mecca and the Soul Brother isn't the only album to push hip-hop forward into the 90s East Coast sound, but by combining so many different elements into Pete Rock's signature sound, he's taking
another album before that pushed the East Coast sound. That was Nas Illmatic. Shout out to Direct Production. What had happened was
several steps forward. Pete Rock found the Tom Scott sample while crate digging with Large Professor. Q-Tip was also apparently there. That's an insane group of hip-hop producers, and just 2 years later, they would all be part of an album from a new, young MC. And the fact that they were all involved on different songs created a little bit of friendly competition between them, pushing them to make better and better music. Q-Tip in particular produced an iconic song, using a production method that, let's just say, it requires patience. I tried this out for myself recently and had mixed results. That was not good. Let's listen to that. I'm keeping it. Let's pause another one. The song was One Love, the MC, Nas, the album, Illmatic, and the production method, pause taping. But for that story, you gotta click here.
Oh, he do you have a video for that? Oh, okay. So he did have one about Illmatic though. I want to check that out another time though. So yeah, other than that, if this was a good little tidbit about They Reminisce Over You, T.R.O.Y by Pete Rock, CL Smooth though. Just mapping out the signature sound of Pete Rock's that was pretty cool as well too, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, other than that, if you like my reaction, like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's your boy T.R.O.Y signing off. One love.